You're welcome to the lecture Fundamentals of Web Programming. In this fourth chapter of Basics of Web Design, we will look at Cascading Style Sheets Basics. Today's lecture on Cascading Style Sheet Basics will equip you with learning outcomes such as how to describe the cascading style sheets, how to list advantages of using cascading style sheets, how to configure color on web pages with cascading style sheets, how to configure inline style sheets, how to configure embedded style sheets, how to configure web page areas within element name, class, ID, and descendant selectors, and finally, how to test your CSS for valid syntax. Overview of Cascading Style Sheets CSS. Cascading Style Sheets, known as CSS, was developed by the W3C. It is used to describe the presentation of a document written in HTML or XML, including XML dialects such as SGV, MathML, or XHTML. CSS describes how elements should be rendered on screen, on paper, in speech, or on other media. Style sheets has been used for years in desktop publishing, which contains the specifications of a document's layout, such as the page size, margins, fonts, and font sizes. It's one of the secret engines behind several typographical styles and spacing to printed media. CSS, on the other hand, provides the functionality of style sheets and much more for web developers. For example, it is used to alter the font, color, size, and spacing of web content, split into multiple columns, add animations and other decorative features. There are three types of CSS, such as inline CSS, internal or embedded CSS, as well as external CSS. CSS are flexible, cross-platform, and they are standard-based language. Please visit the link below to see more features of CSS. CSS advantages. We can see from the slide that CSS has greater typography and page layout control. CSS styles are distinct from the structure. Its styles can be saved in a separate document and linked to a large number of web pages that are potentially smaller documents. CSS is very simple to work with when it comes to site maintenance. CSS cascading style sheets, types and descriptions. Number one is inline styles. Inline styles are configured in the body of the web page by applying an HTML tags attribute to its specific elements. Usually, CSS is written in a separate CSS file with file extension .css or in a style tag inside of the head tag, but there is a third place in which it's also valid. The third place you can write CSS is inside of an HTML tag. When CSS is written using the style attribute, it's called an inline style. In general, this is not considered a best practice. However, there are times when inline styles are the only right choice. Number two is the embedded styles. Embedded styles are configured in the head section of a web page and uses the HTML style element that is applied to the entire web page document. Embedded style sheets are particularly useful for HTML documents that have unique style requirements from the rest of the documents in your project. However, if the styles need to be applied across multiple documents, you should link to an external style sheet instead of using individual embedded style sheets. Number three is external style sheets. External style sheets are configured in a separate text file with .css file extension. An external style sheet is a separate CSS file that can be accessed by creating a link within the head section of the web page. Multiple web pages can use the same link to access the style sheet. The link to an external style sheet is placed within the head section of the page. With an external style sheet, you can change the look of an entire website by changing just one file. Each HTML page must include a reference to the external style sheet inside the link element inside the head section. And finally, number four, imported styles. The imported styles are similar to external styles. The import rule tells the CSS engine to import an external style sheet into another style sheet. This allows style rules from a style sheet to be added to another style sheet. This rule can also be used in combination with media queries to import a style sheet based on the device type. CSS Cascading Style Sheet is used to style and lay out web pages. For example, to alter the font, color, size, and content spacing, to split into multiple columns, as well as adding animations and other decorative features. The Cascade. The Cascade is an algorithm that defines how user agents combine property values originating from different sources. When declarations have more than one origin, the Cascade defines which origin and layer takes priority. This is achieved by assigning a value to an element's property. CSS syntax. Style sheets are composed of rules that describe the styling to be applied. Each rule contains a sector and a declaration. As seen on the slide, the selector points to the HTML element you want to style. The declaration block contains one or more declarations separated by semicolons. Each declaration includes a CSS property name and a value separated by a colon. Looking at the CSS syntax example, here we need to configure a web page to display blue text and yellow background. So we declare the body color as blue and the background color as yellow. This could also be written using the hexadecimal color values as shown below. So we have the body color, the hashtag 0000FF. We also have the background color as the hashtag FFFF00. As seen here, we can see the body is a selector and the color is a declaration property, while the blue is the declaration value. CSS syntax for color values. Here in tables 4.2, we have CSS syntax and the color type. Here on the left, we have the P color :red. The color type is a color name. On the CSS syntax, we have the color and the hashtag FF0000. Its color type is hexadecimal color value. On the CSS syntax, we have the color hashtag F00. Its color type is shortened hexadecimal. It uses one character for each hexadecimal pair and is only used with web safe colors. And further down, we have the color RGB 25500. These are the decimal color value RGB triplet. Furthermore, we have color RGBA 2550005. The color type is a decimal color value RGB triplet, followed by the alpha opacity, which is a value from 0 to 1. And finally, we have the CSS syntax, color HSL. In brackets, we have 0, 100%, and 50%. Its color type is HSL color values. The configured embedded CSS is configured in the head section of a web page. It uses the HTML style element. It is applied to the entire web page document. Its style declarations are contained between the opening and closing style tags. Here is an example of embedded CSS. Within the style tags, we have an open style and a closed style. But between the open and close, we declare the body, background color, powdered blue. We have the heading text, H1, color blue, and we have the paragraph as color red. And finally, we close our style. So we open the style and close the style, but in between the style, we made all our declarations. CSS embedded styles. Embedded style sheets allows you to define styles for a particular HTML document as a whole in one place. This is done by embedding the open and close style tags containing the CSS property in the head of the document. So here in the code, we have the style and we have media all. Media all means that users can actually see the content, can hear the content, can utilize the content in form of speech, can print the content, and so on. That's what the media stands for. We have the body background color as orange. We have the heading text color as yellow. Its margin is left and is pixel 30 pixels. And we close the style. Remember, We open the style here and we close it here. External style sheet. An external style sheet is a separate CSS file that can be accessed by creating a link within the head section of the web page. For example, here is the head section of the web page. We have opened the head and we have closed it here. But in between the open and close, we have the link relationship. Okay, so we have the link here, space rel equals in quote style sheet, and we have space. This actually references the target website. On this page, we can see that multiple pages can associate with the same external style sheet file. We can see how multiple web pages can associate with the same external style sheet file. The link element. The link element is a self-contained tag, and it is placed in the header section with the purpose of associating the external style sheet file with the web page. This element is most commonly used to link to style sheets, but it is also used to establish site icons such as favicon, icons for the home screen, and apps on mobile devices. Here are some examples of a link element. Here on the screen we can have in the head, there is a link element. As we have seen in our previous slide, we have the open head and the closed head. And in between the open and close, we have the link relation and the hypertext referencing to the targeted styles.css. Using an external style sheet. First of all, within the style, we're going to declare the selector, which is the body. Then within the brackets, we have the property name and property values, such as background color and the background values. To associate with the external style sheet called color.css, we have to place the following code, which is link space rel equals in quote style sheet space href equals in quote color.css within the head section as seen on the slide. CSS selectors. The common types of selectors are number 1, HTML element name selector, number 2, class selector, number 3, ID selector, and number 4, descendant selector. The difference between ID and class attribute. The ID is unique in a page and can only apply to one element, while class selector can apply to multiple elements. The difference between ID and class attribute. The ID is unique in a page and can only apply to one element, while class selector can apply to multiple elements. Using CSS with class. Class selector apply a CSS rule to one or more elements on a web page. It does not associate the style to a particular HTML element. Let's configure with a .new. The sample creates a class called new with red italic text. To use this class, we have to code the following HTML. So we open a paragraph and we declare a class called new and we enter the text. So we open the paragraph and we close the paragraph. But before that, we first of all have to enter within the styles, open and close. We have to declare the selector following the property name and the property values. We enter the selector, we enter the color and its value, we close the style. This is how the output will look like. Choosing a CSS ID selector. The ID selector applies a CSS rule to only one element on a web page and configures with hashtag ID name. We're going to use the sample to create an ID called new with red italic text. To use the ID, we're going to code the following HTML tags. So here on the slide, we open a new paragraph with an ID of new and we enter the text. We close the paragraph. But before that, we open the style and close it. In between the style, we declare the ID, which is new, and the color is FF0000, which is red. So we close the style. I'm going to show you how this works in the code. So at this point, I've started by declaring the document type. I've opened the head. I've also opened the style. Here, at this point, the style is closed. So we declare a document type known as the HTML. Altogether, we open the HTML at the top and we close it right at the bottom. So we have the HTML, we open the head, we open the style. At the bottom, we close the style and we close the head. In between the style, we declare the ID, which is new, and we give it a color value. which is hashtag FF0000. And next, we open a body. We close the body. In between the open and close of the body, we entered a paragraph. And we brought in the ID here, this new ID. We brought it into this place. We say ID equals new, and we enter the text we wanted. In this case, this text is red. Remember, after declaring the new ID over here and give it a color, and we connected it here. See, whenever this new is highlighted, the new will be highlighted over here as well, just to show the link or connection. It is declared up here and it is utilized down here within the body. It's declared within the style and head and it is utilized within the body section of the page. I'm going to save this file and launch the file for you to see. So I call it new. So I'm going to click on this new file. So you can see it says this text is red. I'm going to change this color for you to see. I can choose this color to, let's say, blue. Or what color do you like? Let's say blue. And I can save the file. Open it again. Open the file again. So the text color is changed. And I can still change it to whatever color you might prefer. Okay, let's change to green. So we've changed green and we're going to save the file and we're going to open the file again. So the text is changed to green. Sorry, but we forgot to change the output. Okay, let's change the output to green. Let's just call it green. We're not too sure. The file is saved. I'm just going to open it again. Now it says the text is green. Back to our presentation where we started, it says this text is red. And we can see how we've been able to change it from one color to the other. Using a CSS descendant selector. Descendant selector applies a CSS rule within the context of the container, which is the parent element. It is sometimes called a contextual selector. The sample specifies a green text color for only the paragraph elements located within the footer element. So as we can see on the slide, the descendant selector on this case is a footer element, and anything that happens here goes to the footer because it has been declared as footer within the open and close style tags. The span element. The span element is a generic inline container for phrasing content which does not inherently represent anything. It can be used to group elements for styling purposes using the class or ID attribute as they share attribute values such as lang. The purpose of the span element is to configure a specially formatted area displayed inline with other elements such as within a paragraph. There is no line break before and after a span. Here is a span example. Here we have embedded CSS. We open the style and we declare the selector. For the font weight, we give it bold. For the font family, we give it Georgia Times New Roman serif. And for the font size, we give it 1.25 EM. We open the style and we close. So within the body, we create a paragraph containing the text. And within the text, we now utilize this selector called company name. So within the text, we brought in span class equals company name, which is a selector. So we open it at this point, we declared it, and we had the text ACME web design, and we close the span, which means the class selector is only going to be applied to this one, to the ACME web design, while the other texts remain the same. I would like to show more examples of how the CSS really works. Here I've created a HTML page. It's divided into two paragraphs. I've got the head. I have the style here. So the style is equal to all, which means it could be used in all media. I've declared a button here. And the values of the button, I gave it the background color of this. And I've given the text color as this, and the border color is none. The border radius is 2 pixels, which means the pixels by the sides of the box. I've given it 30 pixel height and 1.20 width. Here is the HTML page. I've made it possible for all kinds of media to use it. So the media type is all. And I've declared the button here. Here is the background color of the button. Here is the text color. Here is the border color. The border is none. The border radius is 2 pixels. And here is the height. And here is the width. And here is the cursor. So the cursor at this point is going to change to pointer. Whenever it touches the button, it will change to pointer. I'm going to show you in a moment. So at this point, I just want to save this file and open the CSS HTML. So I'm clicking on the CSS HTML. You can see whenever the mouse is moved on top of the button, it changes to pointer. And you can see it changes to pointer. That's what I want to show you at this point. So let's go back to our code. So next, we declared another selector, the body. So we give the background color this, and the title text, we give it this color. And the background color for the text, we give it this color. For the H4, we give it this color. And for the paragraph, we give it this color. So we've opened a style here. From here, we declared the selectors all the way down here. So we have a style open here and we have a style closed here. We have the button here and the properties, and we have the body and the properties. We have the text color and the properties. We have the background for the text and the properties. We have the background for the color, for the H4 color text and the properties. And we have the paragraph color and the properties. And finally, we close the style. Finally, we close the head. So remember, we open the head here and we close it right at the bottom. Next, we open the body. So we open the body, we open the div, we close the div, and we close the body. So within the div, we declare a class called A, and we have the text H1 and H4. We open the H1 text with the content fundamentals of web programming, and we close it. We open the H4 text with the content of basics of web design, and we close it. We open another paragraph with the content of Cascading Style Sheets Basics Chapter 4, and we close the paragraph. And finally, we close the div. And finally, we close the button. And finally, we close the body. We open a button, and beneath the body, we have the first button that is called Learn. We have the second button that is called Practice. We have the third button that has the href link to a website. So at this point, we open the first one, we call it Learn. We open the second one, we call it Practice. We open the third one, we call it W3C Schools. And we declare a href, which is referencing to the targeted website. And finally, we close the button. So I'm going to save this file and open it in an HTML page. So the CSS HTML is this one. So right now we've seen the fundamentals of web programming, having this as its background color. We've also seen the basics of web design and the Cascading Style Sheets Basics Chapter 4. And finally, we have the buttons containing learn, second button containing practice, third button containing W3 schools. If we click on this button, it's going to take us to the W3 schools. So after clicking on that button, it brought us to W3 schools. So here you can explore and learn various CSS methodologies. If I click on the backspace, it brought us back to our HTML page. More examples. Here I have a CSS class.html. Again, I've opened a document type which is HTML. I've opened the head, the style. I have closed the style and I've closed the head. In this block, we have selectors. At this point, I decided to use your names. I've decided to use Abdul Kudus and Abubakar. Abdul Kudus is representing one background color and Abubakar is representing another background color. So here are the values of the background colors. I've also declared another selector called body and its background color is this. I've declared another selector for the text and its color is this. And finally another selector, H2 selector, and its color is this. At this point, I thought of bringing in an image, which is a CSS logo. So I brought in this image. So at this point, I declare the image, the border radius, such as 50%. So here we open and close our style. We also close our head. So in the first block, we made all our declarations. And the second block, which is the body, we're going to use all that we've declared right on top. So in the body, first of all, we want to look at the div. So within the div, we want to make use of the first selector, which is Abdul Kudus. So we declare a class that is equal to Abdul Kudus. We had a new paragraph, a new H1, and we enter the text. We close the H1, we close the paragraph. We had another paragraph with the H2 and the text. We close the H2 and the paragraph. Finally, we close the div. So this div is made for Abdul Kudus. We had another paragraph, but this time it does not utilize any selector. It's just plain using the body color. So the text is called the Cascading Style Sheet Basics. So at this point, I'm utilizing the image I declared right on top. Remember, the image was declared up here within the style, and I'm trying to utilize the image within the body. So I said img src equals the image name .png. So we can alter the actual text name, and the width is 20, the height is 20, and we close the paragraph. Remember, this paragraph does not utilize any class. It's just on its own, right inside the body. And finally, we want to utilize the Abubakar class. So we say class equals Abubakar, and we enter the content, which is CSS coding continued. So remember, we open the paragraph and we close the paragraph. Finally, we close this body. So in this block, we've made use of Abdul Kudus class. We've also made use of Abubakar's class. We've also imported an image within this block. So finally, we close the HTML. So right now, we've got our page completed. I'm going to save this file and show you how it looks on the HTML page. So I'm going to open the class page. So this is what we have. We have the fundamentals of web programming, basics of web design. We have the cascading style sheets basics. We have the logo. We have the CSS coding continued. Remember here we utilize the Abdul Kudus class. And over here, we utilize the Abubakar's class. We gave it the background of this color, and the Abdul Kudus, we gave the background of the same color. But right at the middle, this text utilizes the body background, which is this. And here is the logo. I can just view in for you to see the logo. That is a CSS logo version 3. So coming back to the code, I've purposely used these names just to show how flexible and how easy it is for you to use whatever name you prefer in the easiest way you love it to be. W3C CSS validation. Looking at the slide, you can see the link, and clicking on this link should take us to this page where all your codes can be validated. CSS troubleshooting tips. You have to verify you are using the colon and semicolon symbols in the right spots, as they are easy to confuse. You have to check you are not using equal signs instead of colons between each property and its value. You have to verify that the two bracket symbols are properly placed. You have to check the syntax of your selectors, the properties and property values for correct usage. You have to check if part of your CSS works or does not work. You have to review your CSS and determine the first rule that have been applied. And finally, you can validate your CSS at the following link. Chapter 4 Summary. In this 4th chapter, we explained cascading style sheets basics, taken from our main topic, Basics of Web Design. This chapter introduced you to cascading style sheet rules associated with color on web pages. You configured inline styles, embedded styles, and external styles. You applied CSS style rules to HTML, class, and ID selectors. You are able to submit your CSS to the WC3 class. And finally, how you will be able to submit your CSS to the WC3 CSS validation test. In summary, chapter 4, we examine the followings: overview of cascading style sheets CSS, CSS advantages, types of cascading style sheets, description of the types of cascading style sheets, the cascade, CSS syntax, CSS syntax sample, CSS syntax for color values, inline CSS with the style attributes, configure embedded CSS with the style element, CSS embedded styles, external style sheets, the link tag element, using an external style sheet, CSS selectors, using CSS with class, using a CSS ID selector, using a CSS descendant selector, the span element, span tag example, W3C CSS validation, and CSS troubleshooting tips. We have now come to the end of the 4th chapter of Basics of Web Design. Thank you all for your attendance.